I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Can your work has been like fucking me up for a long time. And it's just like, it's so both like close in and broad, right? Like you can just sort of step into it the way you step into water and you're just like, oh, my feet are wet, but like I know that I'm connected to all this other stuff. And so I have been personally like just really fed by it. So thank you for that and for writing it. And of course for being here with us.
Thank you. Generous.
You just won the Cave Canem Northwestern Prize for Blessed Are the Peacekeepers.
Or the Blessed Are the Peacemakers.
Peacemakers, sorry. Why I should have read the bio. And when is that? I read somewhere 2021, somewhere 2022. When is that book dropping?
2022. Definitely not this year.
Okay.
2022.
That's nice. A little bit of space around that. When you are working on a book, or when you're not working on a book, what is your writing practice like?
That's a good question. It's super random. I am a part of a writing group that a friend of mine runs. And we meet once a week and she gives a writing prompt and we sort of respond to that and bring in another poem we've been working on. So that's sort of, pushing me to be creating something and looking at a poem a week. And I'm so grateful for that space because otherwise I don't know what I would do. My writing process is super random. I do try to keep I keep a journal, I keep the notes on my phone full of like ideas. The notes on my phone are so important, just because you never know when a poem, is going to fall out of the sky. And so it's nice to be able to just jot something, jot it down as it comes and then go on with my day.
And then like stumble back across it, right?
Yeah. When I'm actually like ready to like do something, Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any rituals that you sort of that get you into the writing space when it's time to like, okay, so there's the poems that fall out of the sky and just like stop in front of you and force you. And then there's like, there are the times when we have to sit down and like, well, I got this writing group in a week. And are there ways that you prime yourself or your mind?
When I want to be writing more, I do try to read more poetry and just like read more in general, But yeah, no, there was one time last year when I did sort of that poem a day thing, the 30 for 30 for the very first time, not in April with everyone else on my own time in July, I think. And I would sort of walk my dog around every day and I would make a list of the things I saw as I walked. And then I would write a poem where the things in the list had to appear in the order that I saw them. So that was really fun and super random poems that like got me out of my comfort zone and out of my usual imagery and like usual just way of proceeding down the page. That was really fun. And I do I have been feeling like, oh, I'd like to do something like that again. Because the summer is a good generating time for me. But no, I am super just like, I'll be like watching TV or I'll be, just bored, and like, oh, I guess I should like look at a poem, I keep the poems. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I'll look at a poem on my phone a lot too. Like I'll pull up a Word, the Pages documents because it's like all in the cloud. And so like I'll fiddle with existing poems, like at the dog park or just like, just like be like, oh, I need to go back and look at that poem from last night. It's like haunting me, like from whatever I worked on in group. Um,
And you can focus, you can shut out other things and just
Yeah, I do better that way. I like one of the things I missed most sort of during lockdown, or one of them at least, was working in coffee shops. I loved the noise, I loved it was also just like good to not be in my home, like with all of my distractions here, it's like, well, I guess I'll just sit here until something appears on this page. Um, yeah, I don't know. I like if when a poem is calling me, a poem is calling me. It doesn't really matter what's going on around me. I'm pretty good at just being like, okay, soup.
it's gonna be there.
Yeah.
Did you grow up with many siblings or like in a loud household? Is that
I mean, I wouldn't say I had two younger brothers, and so like they were definitely around and like in my space, but I also was the only person in my family who had their own room from the time I was like 7. So it is important to me to be able to like close the door. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's something about like a poem, like when it's like time for it. I mean, I do have moments where I'm like, okay, I need to like hear this poem aloud. I want to be able to say it and not have people looking at me like I'm crazy. And in those moments, I do sort of,
You don't do that at the coffee shop?
Yeah. And once it's time to start saying the poem, I'm like, all right, I need to go home because like I need to hear this. But I mean, under my breath, I will sit there for a while, just like be muttering it to myself under my breath. Yeah, because I don't know, I love the energy, like one of the things I loved about going to like Cave Canem retreat was just sort of folks would just sit out in the open and write together, and like some folks would be playing spades or dominoes or like giving twerk lessons in the distance, and like it's just like the energy of folks. It's nice sometimes when you're writing.
Yeah. The first time, because so much of writing before you are in those sort of spaces, those writing focused spaces, like it takes a lot to get to those spaces, right? Like, there's a lot of slogging on your own before and then you apply and then you're accepted to something like that. But I remember the first time I sat in a place, I was at Goddard, and I was like, oh, everyone here loves words.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
And that's been so essential for me because there's no way I'm going to read everything. So it's nice to have like other people reading and recommending things. So what are you reading? What's blowing your mind these days?
I'm reading, I'm currently reading Bell Hooks's All About Love, which is beautiful, and challenging and so real.
Is this your first?
This is my first time reading it. Yeah, and it's really, really beautiful. Just the way she's willing to say how that love is active, and that most of us live without love, and the only way to change it is to acknowledge that and to change the pattern and the culture. And so I appreciate, such an honest look at love, and sort of she talks about how we aren't taught as a culture to define it, and treat it as this mystical thing. And it was just sort of, it reminded me of Audre Lorde's essay, Poetry is Not a Luxury, and how she says sort of the job of the poet is to give language to things that we don't have language for so that they can be thought, and that so then we can turn that thought into action. and so it was nice to sort of have bell hooks sort of like giving language for what love is and how it looks in action. Yeah. And so I don't know, I want to do poems, like use it for prompts. See.
Yeah. I think like really we're so often just sort of like, nobody teaches us how to love in a way that's not self-destructive, right?
Yeah.
Like our sort of like the initial, if we're very fortunate, the initial experience of love that we have is our mother, which is like so much sacrifice, and it's a self-destructive job.
Yeah.
It's not a model for how you're gonna navigate the world with love at all.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, it is interesting, and for folks who grow up in households where their parents are, did not receive love themselves and did not know how to give it, it's even more challenging. One thing I did appreciate about the book is how she focuses on like learning to love the self too, as like just as important as learning to love others, and just as like an integral part of the process. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm reading The Body Is Not an Apology.
It's on my list, that's for sure.
It's been a while, and I ordered, I don't know, I moved and then lost some books. I think I can identify some thieves, but yeah, no, and it's this thing that's like this idea of being worthy, and how much we have to fight for it, fight ourselves for it. It's a thing that like, I wish I could be like, oh yeah, I read all about love, 10 years ago, and I'm all good. It's fine. Love myself, love everyone else. We're fine. But it's like this practice, because I change, and then I'm like, what do I do? And for me, poetry writing, not necessarily poetry only, but writing has been like an essential tool for that practicing and stepping towards where I'm trying to be, where I want to go, who I want to be, how I want to forgive myself and others.
Certainly.
But it took a long time for me to like allow myself to do that work on the public page, right? Like I could do it maybe in my journal when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And you do it. You do it. Can you
so much feet dragging and such, just like, who put that in the world? Whose idea was this? I do that. I do. I put like very intimate poems out there. I think I do it because, number one, I write the poems that are in front of me. I write the poems that I need to write to keep moving, to stay alive, and to keep loving, and keep, figuring out myself and all of that stuff. And then, I like to joke that like poetry is my only marketable skill, which is maybe not entirely true. But I don't know, I do regularly struggle with it, what it means to be creating and then putting this work out in the world. And I think the thing that sort of anchors me is sort of remembering the times that I was saved by someone else's poems, when sort of this pandemic has been rough on all of us, the isolation and sort of time to confront so much of ourselves and our lives. And, one of the things I was sort of processing was just like a horrible breakup that had been abusive, sort of, that fortunately ended before the pandemic. And I say, like, I started reading Stag's Leap again by Sharon Olds. And it was just so tender and so vulnerable and so honest. And it just like brought me back to language, it brought me back into my feelings. It gave me someone to cry with, you know? And yeah, I think, you know, it's the reminder that like, yes, it feels vulnerable, and yes, it feels difficult sometimes to see a representation of yourself so out there in the world. But our lives are not that unique, you know. So many people are hurting in such similar ways, and it's such a comfort, you know, to hear the truth spoken out loud. So yeah, I feel like I'm just I remind myself to just return the favor. You know, so many poets have done that for me. You know, said the truths that I needed to hear, and allowed us in, you know, into the vulnerable, intimate parts of their lives and hearts. Yeah, and it's saved us, you know, so many of us.
So many of us, yes, absolutely. I love that answer. I love too that our lives are not unique. As a source of so much comfort in a time when there seems to be like all of this pressure to like have a hot take and and to stand out and to be extraordinarily interesting. But that's a really grounding thing to remember, that in fact somebody has experienced everything that we're experiencing.
Yeah, and they would be so grateful, you know, to be reminded of that. You know, I'm so grateful when I like hear stories that sound similar to mine, and stories that like sound similar to mine but that have endings that I could not have imagined for myself, you know? Or that just sort of, yeah, just remind me that like, yeah, I am stuck in this rut now, but sort of, yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's, I'm always grateful, you know, to hear how other folks have survived, you know, which is sort of what poetry at its best is a record of. You know, it's like how we've survived, you know, what joy has kept us here, you know, and or how we've sort of found names for our grief, you know.
Yeah, what joy has kept us here. What joy has sustained you in the, when we shut down those first 3 weeks, it became abundantly clear that I'd been going too fast before, and so like I just felt this deep, certainly fear and anxiety and all of these negative feelings, but also just like a relief to wake up and not be like running to catch up with myself.
Yeah.
And I feel like I really need to fight really hard to name the things that I will not lose from that slowdown. Is there any joy that you discovered during the slowdown that you're going to hang on to like hell?
I mean, I loved every minute of being at home with my dog. And I am determined to take her with me wherever I can and whenever I can. Because she's such a comfort, you know, she's such a reminder that like when the world is in total chaos, that like, oh my gosh, the grass is green, I am going to rub my body in it because it feels good, you know, like she's just such joy and pleasure. And you know, it's nice to just watch her run, you know. And yeah, I think my favorite activity this whole pandemic has just been walking her to the dog park and sitting. I refuse to give that up, you know.
Yeah, the walking, my during the week hiking is something that I'm just like, nope, like why do I have to like try to cram all joy into the weekend?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Oh
that?
yeah.
Why was I doing that? That's too small of a percentage of my week.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I refuse. One thing I have learned to say post during this pandemic is that I will be avoiding the 40-hour work week like the plague that it is. You know, I do not need it, you know, and of course that takes I could say that with a great degree of privilege, you know, that like I have the means to sort of try to find other ways, to make money, but it's not good for any of us,
No.
it's not good for any of us. And it's been nice to sort of center my own comfort as opposed to our culture's demands on productivity and go 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 go. It's like, go where? I just want to go to the park.
Right? And I love that you also have like dog-led poetry prompts now.
Yeah.
It's like, no,
this is productive.
This is the work.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun.